Welcome to Don't Whistle at Night podcast, where Navajo legends echo in the shadows. Darren and Dawn will guide you through the sacred fire of native storytelling, where the old stories breathe, the unknown walks among us, and voices, long hidden, rise to be heard. And remember, don't whistle at night.
Hello, everybody. Hello. Welcome to Don't Whistle at Night. We are broadcasting live here on the United Public Radio Network, 107.7 FM in New Orleans. I am your host, Don Yazzie, and with me, as always, my co-host, Darren Yazzie. Today, we have a very, very special guest, and his name is Mr. Fred in Alaska, Fred Roehl, of the Subarctic Sasquatch channel that everyone is a fan of, and I myself am a fan, and I love all the stories over there, and it's really keeping us company at work in my field, and that's really thankful for this episode. I'm kind of nervous. I don't know about Darren, but I'm really happy about this episode. And Darren, you want to say hi to everybody?
Hey, hi. What's going on, everybody? Hopefully, you guys are all staying warm. We got this Arctic blast going on, so sit close to the fire, and prepare to hear some stories. This man that we have on to, he's a really good character. I've seen a couple of his videos, and tell you the truth, I fell asleep on one of them, and I could hear the story, so I just had a whole dream of it. So I'm like, oh man, like I had a little had the story playing in my head, and I had a dream, so dreaming of it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's all good, man. So yeah. It's all good.
That's what's up, man. Yeah, tonight we're doing the show a little different. We try to run it through the soundboard here, and we are having technical difficulties with Mr. Fred in Alaska, so we resorted to phone call. So I'm gonna hold the phone call up to the mic, and he can only hear me, and he can't hear anybody else. So remember, guys, I'm gonna let him cook. I'm going to let him tell his stories. And if you guys have questions, please put it in the chat, and I'll ask him these questions in between the stories. And yeah, we'll just be little kids here and just sit around the fire and let our elder tell us a story type of deal. And I hope you guys all enjoy this very special show as well. Every Sunday is a special show. Well, before we get started, let's say hi to the viewers real quick. See here, Javon Koshel 24/7. Good evening, Don and Darren. Hey, Koshel, thank you, brother. What's up? AZ Lyman 47. Good evening, brothers. Don, Darren. Hope all is well. Excited for this Alaska show. Hey, me as well. AZ Lyman, me as well. Vet Girl 84. Hi all. Hey, Vet Girl. And the reminder here, I just caught myself here. If you caught us with the last show, Mr. Sean Kelly, or my brother, Mr. Sean Kelly's Into the Night, and you're joining us and whistling into the night with us, thank you. And welcome in, everybody. And everyone, say welcome in the chat. Everyone be friendly with each other, please. There's no division here. We're all family here at the story time. And I like to say it. That's all. Okay, Pavlos, you gents are the cure for Sunday blues. Hope everyone has a great week. Oh, likewise. Thank you for the kind words, right, Darren?
Oh yeah, man. Been called a lot of things. That was one of them that just caught me off guard right there. So, genuine smile for real.
Oh yeah, thank you guys. Najoni Yeja, good evening, Double D's. Hey, good evening, Najoni Yeja. Yeah, we got Dead Wolf 66. Oh, Studis. Tina, hey, Tina. Z Sun Dragon, hi all. Hey, what's up, Mr. Z Sun? make sure you remind Sean Kelly that we send him all the pumpkin spice love from here at the Muscle at night. Sean Kelly doesn't like pumpkin spice. Navajo Ace One. Hey, what's up? Salute to you, brother. Salute. AZ Lion 47. My show was the bestest of all. Definitely.
No.
Definitely. True to my tribe. 0918. Still no snow. No, ma'am.
Oh,
No.
over here.
Cosmic Voice. Hey, alien time for sure. Deadwolf 66. Hey, all right. We caught up with everyone on the comments. Darren, any final words you want to say before we bring Fred to the microphone?
Oh, check up on your elders. Check up on the older people out there. There's a lot of snow. And it's getting pretty cold out there. So call them, check up on them. I'm pretty sure they would like to see you guys. So wherever you guys are.
Oh yeah. Yep.
And
definitely.
Yes. Let's go, man. Let's get this show rolling. Let's bring on the guest, man. I'm kind of excited too.
Okay. Let's do this. K-Native guy, hello. We're just getting started right on time. Okay, Mr. Fred, can you hear me?
Me now?
Oh yeah. You're on speaker and you're on the microphone right now. If you can say hello. Yes, sir. Can you hear him, Darren?
Yeah, I can hear him.
Okay. Yep, Darren can hear you. Yeah, say hello to everyone, and you can start telling your story wherever you want, Fred.
So you've been on and glad for having me on. Appreciate it. Roehl from Bristol Bay, Alaska, Dillingham, small fishing village, and I'm a Curyung tribal member. And in remote Alaska, I was raised with the subsistence lifestyle. Like going to the grocery store was like going to Disneyland, and it was different. Looking back on it, a lot of people assume that when you raise subsistence lifestyle, it's the whole tribe gets together and plan a massive hunt and stuff like that. And that's not the case. It's individual families. You're out and about, you see a spruce grouse, you shoot it. You have it for later on for dinner. Porcupine or what have you. It's been romanticized by a lot of people, but it's rough and tumble. It doesn't get more real. You get desensitized to, death and butchering animals and all that at a very young age. And looking back, I was blessed to be raised that way, because a lot of people nowadays are, trying to get into survival classes and, how to do bushcraft and all this other stuff. And it's by default, I was raised with all those skills. Thankful for that. But, growing up in a village, close-knit family, a lot of things were done together as a family. And we're from an oral history. And, there's something to be said about that, because we're losing it. A lot of these younger kids they just don't respect the culture that they're from. And they're not holding on to the old ways, so to speak. They're shunning their culture through, social media and all this other kind of, crap. It's a shame to see, because, being from an oral tradition, with all the elders dying, we're losing it little by little. Everyone has their own piece to add to that oral history, and they're passing away, and people who they could pass it down to aren't listening, and it's really sad. And I just encourage all those listening from that type of background, oral tradition, pay attention to what your elders are saying, because if you don't, when they're gone, your culture's gone, man. You can't take it for granted. You got to be a part of it. And I turned my back on my culture, in my mid-teens through early 20s. Just school, living out of state half the time, and all that. I didn't realize exactly how rich of the culture I came from, and it just seemed backwards. When you live in the city and you chase all that glitters is not gold kind of attitude, you can really lose out on a lot. So I encourage all those who are listening, if they're young, pay attention. You know, listen to what your elders are trying to teach you, and truly hear them, because once it's gone, and it's a shame. But enough on that. That's kind of a downer. But yeah, no. Being from remote Alaska, you know, we were raised with the stories about the hairy man will steal you and eat you. Don't whistle in the woods, even at night. You know, even during the day, you don't want to be whistling. And always pay attention to your surroundings. Don't go anywhere alone, because I mean, you know, the hairy man will steal you and eat you. And you know, when I was little, I used to think I was a savvy kid, so I was like, they just don't want me in the woods working on my tree fort. You know, I was a hard-headed little guy, you know. And so 1983, my Aunt Lucy was watching us, because us younger cousins, we were still too little for fish camp yet, you know. And so, you know, one relative would watch all us little hellions that were a little underage before we were, you know, big enough to go help at fish camp, which fish camp is, it involves, you know, gill net, setting it, pulling it in, pulling the fish, processing it, letting it, you know, smokehouse stuff, jar it, just, you know, preserving stuff for the winter to come. But anyway, so in 1983, I thought, they just don't want me working on my tree fort. And I had this old fish brailer, which is like a cargo netting, you know, and I had it nailed up in a tree before with the help from older cousins, and I wanted to go work on it. So I snuck away. This is the middle of the day, and we were at my grandma's house where my aunt was watching us, and it was right next to the airport runway in Dillingham on the Squaw Creek side. So not far from my grandma's house. I mean, I could still see it through the alders. And as I'm walking down this trail, it's kind of like a J hook, you know, from my grandma's porch on her house. That's the bottom of the J, and it kind of wraps, you know, semicircular, and then stays shot down towards the gravel pit. Towards the end of the runway is where I was walking, and about 70 yards in front of me was a line of alders from an old cat cut trail. And in those alders, I saw someone tall, and I thought it was my Uncle Leo, because he was like 6 foot something. But I stopped real quick, and then it dawned on me, well, no, my Uncle Leo's, you know, down on Nushagat Beach. And then it dawned on me again that those bushes were 10, 12 tall, and this thing was a little taller than them, and it started swaying back and forth at the time, and it really got my attention then. You know, all the hair stood up on my body, and all of a sudden it screamed at me. And man, I tell you, I was already a fast running kid. Man, I could have beat any Kenyan on the track. I told you that. I got the hell out of there. I went right back around, and by the time I got back to the porch, which wasn't all that far away from where I made it to, VHF we use as VHF radio, like CB radio, we use as like the telephone system, you know, back in those days. And we had landlines, but you know, VHF was real quick. You know, people could talk, you know, real fast without dialing. And when I was coming around, got back to the porch, Auntie was already standing there, and all my other cousins, been 9 of them out there. They were already all in the house, and she was holding a gun. And you know, I got yelled at because, I mean, justifiably so. I was, you know, not listening. But when we got inside, the VHF was lighting up. You know, back then, bush pilots, you know, in their small planes, if they saw anything, they would just, you know, get the VHF and warn people, hey, there's a hairy man by the Muskeg's to the airport, or seen it at Squaw Creek, or, you know, wherever it may be, Matacota, Flint Hills. But being raised like that, I thought it was normal. Being screamed at, no. That made me realize they weren't bullshitting when they told me, hey, you know, they'll steal you and eat you, and they're real. What I'm talking about is the close-knit village life is fading so quick, because it was, even though people wouldn't publicly speak about the hairy man because there's a superstitious beliefs, bad omens, and they'll, you know, someone could die or have a fishing season, hunting, or, you could conjure them, by saying their name. People would actually warn each other when one was seen, and that's gone. People will see them and they won't even say nothing to their neighbors anymore. And it's a shame, because as an example, I have contacts throughout the state. Being Alaska Native, I have a lot of people that reach out and I stay in contact with them all over. If outsiders were to hear just one 40-minute conversation with one of these villagers, it would blow their mind how nonchalant talking about the hairy man is once they're willing to talk to you. That's the thing. Outsiders, they'll never hear this stuff because, like, all right, for an example, when I started the channel, just to get pin in that real quick, when I started the channel, a few of my elders were like, why are you wasting your breath on the gussets? They don't listen, and they'll just make fun, right? Which is fair enough. Some do. But point is like, no one would believe it, hearing it, because it's so nonchalant. It's like saying you saw a moose cross the road on Tuesday. It's just what it is in village life. And it's just crazy exactly how much stuff is going on up here. I'm not trying to veer off track or anything. When you get a call from a villager and they tell you about 10 encounters that happened over the last handful of months, anywhere from berry patches and whatnot. Like, you remember I sent you those pictures. That first one I sent you is with the trees in the background and the tundra leading up to it, and that there's a female in that picture with a little one on her back. Okay, that's an example of what I'm talking about. The outside world barely gets a glimpse into the day-to-day realities of what some villagers live with. That was taken by a woman who was picking berries with her little kid, and she tried to warn others. And the others, even in the same village, they know what's going on. They just, because the public was watching, they started mocking her. That shouldn't be happening. They should be championing the cause and saying, oh, crap, hey, pass the word. There's a female hairy man over there eyeballing someone's kid. Sorry, I get lost in the thoughts of exactly all the stuff that's going on. And I don't mean to be all over the place at all. So if I am, just, get me back on the rails, so to speak.
No, you're good. You're good. This is you're basically a reporter, you know what I mean? This is about everything that's going on out there in Alaska that we are unaware of down here in the lower 48. So feel free, brother. It's all good, man. This is your episode. Go ahead, brother.
Right. And so, like I was saying, that picture I sent you, if you look at it and zoom in the center where that dark figure is in the trees, and I don't showcase evidence if you got to draw a line around it to show where the figure is, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
That's not, it means something to somebody who took it, but it's not of evidentiary value, and I'm not knocking it. But if you got to draw a line around it because you can't see it otherwise, then you got nothing. And I'm not trying to knock it or devalue that, but being in the center of there, that's reported as a female with a little one on her back. I don't know if you have the capability of zooming in on that figure, but you can easily see the little one clinged onto the back.
Yeah.
And, those are the kind of reports I get on a regular basis, whether they be nearby a berry patch, or they were stalking some elders as they're walking back from somewhere in the village. I don't want to put any particular village on blast. There's so many that have occurrences on a regular basis, whether it be outright harassment, a Sasquatch or a hairy man trying to take a kid or a woman.
Wow.
It's unreal. It happens frequently. And with, it being Alaska, we have a crazy problem here with 500 to 2,000 people go missing every year. Okay, and since they've been keeping track since 1989, over 20,000 have gone missing. Now, anywhere else, like, but you don't hear about it. You hear, shows, oh, missing in Alaska, but that's easy to chalk up to Hollywood nonsense if you don't know. The reality is they don't even showcase it on the daily news up here much, unless it's so outlandish of a missing person case or they're of some importance. You don't hear about it, man. And that's crazy to me, because we have 780 some thousand total population throughout the state, in a state large enough that, man, you can fit 19 other states in Alaska, over 1 million miles of coastline. Like, Alaska's huge, it's vast, but we have a very small population. And to have that many people go missing every year, and powers that be don't even bat an eye about it, there's something wrong with that, And that was another driving factor for the channel, was to just put it on blood. I mean, grant you, on my channel, I don't sit there and continuously talk about the missing people. And the reason for that is I tried initially to kind of get context of the missing people and what's going on, who were they, where are they from, all that. But, when you get down to it, you only end up the missing person bulletin. And then when you reach out to the authorities to find out more, they have a go-to cop-out, which is it's an open investigation. They can't share any information. So it's like trying to add all that into the channel is just like an impossible hurdle. But with that many missing people, I felt, because of my experience in 2006, I needed to warn people to be, like, bear aware, I know some people watch the channel for entertainment. That's fine. I get it, because they truly don't know. They're fence riders, or they just like a good story, I guess, or whatever, even though they're real life encounters. And one of the main purposes is to keep in mind of the behaviors prior to a serious encounter. So if it be like an owl food whistling, pine cones being thrown, rocks being thrown, maybe someone who didn't have it in their wheelhouse before, they hear some of those stories and they realize, oh, wait, I remember hearing about something similar to this on that channel. Maybe it'll give them enough time to rethink where they're at and, like, get out of there before something traumatic happens. Yeah. Or they end up a missing person bulletin. Mm-hmm. It's anywhere else it'd be a public health crisis, man. Up here it's freaking Sunday,
Yeah, wow, definitely.
It's just wow. Crazy. I mean, grant you, Alaska does have a different bar set for extreme. You know what I mean? Like, the weather, everything up here is so extreme, and people ask me a lot, why is the behavior up here so much more aggressive? And I truly think, because if we break it down and look at where the encounters happen, a bunch of them happen at berry patches, hunting grounds, fishing grounds. Those are resource gathering areas. And with the extreme environment up here and the short seasons, I mean, grant you, land of the midnight sun, yes, but that's not for very long. It's a very short season up here in the summer. And I think, the aggression is a direct reflection of that extreme environment and the short resource gathering time frame. And also, when I was a kid, I would ask an elder, why are they after us, and because I was, being curious. And after I got screamed at in '83, and then a little later on that season, after fishing season, when all the adults came back and we went up to hunting camp, which we would camp out on a 32-foot fishing boat and anchor out in the Nushagak River, and we would use skiffs to rip around, 18, 20-foot lunds to, basically use as satellite vessels to run up and down, looking for moose. And we had an A-frame built on the back of this one particular fishing boat of my uncle's, and had a tarp drape. So with that A-frame in the stern, where normally you be setting your net, pulling net in, and storing the fish in the holds, that would be the area where you'd hang your quarters of moose or caribou or what have you. And that same 1983, earlier that summer, I got screamed at. Fall, when we were upriver, when we were coming back from hunting, we're at Black Point, which is it's like the tidal zone of the Nushkak River, not quite the mouth of the river, but it's right where the fresh water meets the groundwater, you know? And so we ended up getting stuck on that 32-foot fishing boat in the gravel part. It was getting dark, you know what I mean? But it wasn't fully set up. Sun was just, and so there was like not quite twilight, but there's still kind of plenty of light. But got stuck on the gravel bar, and with the tide being out, they weren't going to be able to get that boat unstuck until the tide came back in. And us kids, you know, there's a handful of us, we're rambunctious, you know, we're just kids. And so my older cousin that was with us was like, I'm going to take the kids and I'll take them sport fishing, you know, grab their rods and reels and I'll get them out of your hair, because they weren't sure if the tide was going to go out more and the boat might list over to the side or whatever. So they were the adults were stressing on whether or not the boat was going to, you know, get tipped over and then get swamped once the tide came in. So, I mean, that's fair, you know. So we all jumped in the skiff and backing away from the fishing boat, and us kids are rammed loud, and we start hearing screaming, and it's the adults on the boat waving us back, right? I mean, we literally just started backing away from the boat, so we weren't that far, and we heard splashing, but we weren't paying attention. Once we got back to the boat, all of a sudden, us kids are getting yanked out of there, man, fast, and forced inside the cabin. And they said, get down in there, get down in there. And when we get inside, looking out the windows, we heard the screaming. And so we're like, what the hell? Well, those kids start looking up out the window, up on the bluff. And the river at that point, from where we were stuck, it was about 65, 70 yards to the opposite riverbank, which was the side where this hairy man was. But bluff was about, 65, 70 feet tall. It was somewhere in that range, right? And this, you could see it up there silhouetted, and it's screaming, and it was chucking rocks, but the rocks weren't like hitting the boat. They were just splashing around, and this thing was up there screaming, and us kids, we didn't know. We're like, oh yeah, the hairy man screaming, whatever, you know, we're like just kind of checking it out, because it was real, but we didn't feel danger, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so as we're standing there, the adults are, of course, they're arming themselves because they knew better than us at the time, but all of a sudden that hairy man started chucking rocks at me. And this is a fiberglass boat. One of the rocks hit and dented the side of this thing, this fishing boat. And then another rock was thrown, and it busted through the tarp and hit one of the quarters of moose meat so hard it snapped off its line and landed on the deck. And that's when they're like, get them down underneath, you know, to where the sleeping area was. So we got sequestered down under there. You just heard the volleys of gunshots after that. And then you'd hear screaming. And then you'd hear the adults talking about, I stood back up. You know, I know I hit it. You know, I mean, these are subsistence hunters. You know, they're raised on one shot, one kill. So at that distance was nothing for them. And plus, some of them are Vietnam veterans. They, you know, they were well versed in using firearms. And, you know, the steaming and everything was going on for a while. You'd hear another volley of shots. You'd hear my dad and my uncles just, you know, saying stuff to each other, but it was kind of mumbled because we were down below and the motor was running. So some of the motor noise was canceling out some of the stuff going on. But, you know, us kids sitting down there, it got quiet after a while and we weren't hearing anything. And, you know, being still pretty young, we all kind of tuckered out and fell asleep. Next thing you know, I was waking up, we were pulling in the Old Harbor in Dillingham. But, you know, things like that, you know. And as a kid, you just, man, it's life in Bush, Alaska. It's not a daily occurrence by any means. There's not a hairy man behind every bush, but you know and you understand that there's more out there than, you know, what you're told in the outside world. You know, same with like my aunts would always warn us about the little people, you know, hey, don't wake them up. You know, that you wake them up, they'll steal your soul. If they're sleeping in the tundra and it's daylight, they're pretending. They want you to come and engage with them so they could steal your soul or take you and eat you.
Damn.
And I never asked exactly why everything wanted to steal us and eat us, but, you know, it was just one of those things, you know. And some things that, man, that should be one of the first questions, you know what I mean? Like, why do they want to eat me, man? And if they do, I hope I'm gamey and buff. They got to cook me for 8 hours, you know. But it's one of those things. It's kind of hard to express when you weren't raised that way. And I had Miss Hillary come on. It was Voices from the Village #2. I interviewed her. She didn't want to be on camera, which was okay. I understand. But she expressed how it was for her in the same village. I grew up with her, but each person is told something different. We're under the umbrella of the hairy man, little people, fish to ka, hell wolves, all these, all these supposed cryptids. We all live in the same village, but it's not like we have a big meeting in an auditorium or something somewhere and all discuss it. It's individually handled within the family. And I brought her on to showcase how that actually works. And so she shared what she was told about the hairy man when she was little and the little people and all that. And, everything is very, very similar. If there was an area we knew hairy man hung out a lot, the kids knew it. Everyone knew where not to go, whether it's bluff south of, Ekwok or what have you, near Curyung. There's another bluff about a mile out. I've had several people work out of that village, doing remote work. And I told them, when they're going, because they'd ask, advice on how to interact with people. I said, just be yourself. Don't act better than anybody. And, once you get to know the guys, then ask, And each one of them, they were told, hey, that bluff over there, about a mile out, the hairy man lives there. We don't go there. There's all sorts of things. And remote village life, man, it's hard. There's a lot of abject poverty. There's a lot of alcoholism and drug abuse and feeling of no way out and no future for a lot of these small villages. And it's a shame, because I think a large factor is losing our way and losing our culture, and too much reliance on the outer world for any validation or just, cultural rights being lost little by little. Yeah. Sorry, I had some snow slide off the Tahoe over the windshield and it stifled me. But so there's just so many different just the social dynamics alone. In the modern times, I mean, grant you, there's been alcoholism since it's been introduced, years ago by the fur trappers and whatnot, but just the whole cryptid thing in remote Alaska, it's easy to chalk it up as anyone not living it to just dismiss it as, oh, they just want attention, or it's they must have had a little too much fire water, or smoking the wacky tobacco or something stupid. They want to dismiss it and discount it, and or say, oh, they just saw a bear, but they're so ignorant they don't know what a bear is. Wait a minute, we're raised with coastal brown bears. I'm from the home of the largest salmon return in the world. I know what bears do. I was raised with it. I've seen them run, jump, fall, all of it. Everything of bear behavior is possible. I've seen it with my own eyes. So I know the difference between a bear standing over there and a hairy man. It's night and day difference. It's just stuff like that. And I'll let you ask any questions if you have any. I'm just kind of rambling here, just sharing some random thoughts about this, that, and the other. So, if you got a particular thing, just let me know. But
Okay. Let me ask Darren if he has a question right now. Hey, Darren, you got a question?
Oh yeah, the whole Alaskan thing, it seems to be so romanticized. Even Elvis Presley has a song about Alaska. Come down to Alaska or something like that. This is one thing that people don't hardly understand or can't grasp the whole idea of a Bigfoot or Sasquatch. They're really, they're people take them as their friend. They're my ally Bigfoot. But on the other end, they are super aggressive, and they do happen to harm people. And who knows, all these missing people, who knows that maybe a Bigfoot got to them, or there's a reason why they say the hairy man's gonna come down and eat you, probably because they probably have. That's the scary part about it. So you're against the whole friendly Bigfoot thing, huh? I would take it.
Okay. Hey Darren, just remember your questions has to be short because he can't hear
Yeah,
you.
yeah, I know. Yeah,
But
I know.
so the
I
question
just
is the
just to
oh
get
no,
it
it's
out
all
there.
good, all good. It's all good. So Darren's question is well he'll catch this after the show's done. But
Yeah.
he said that the Alaskan Bigfoot is not your friendly forest giant, right?
No, not at all. No. And one of the questions I asked an elder was, why do they want to, eat us or whatever? Actually, why is there a problem between us? Like, why do we have to always watch out for the hairy man? And I was just told it's always been that way. But that's again speaking for our slice of that pie here in Alaska. Through our tribe and through my elders, it's always been that way. And I, but what you guys deal with down there, there's a lot of spiritual side, and up here it seems a lot more raw, aggressive, not as I wouldn't say refined, but it's definitely different. They're not forest friends, not in my opinion. Any creature that will sit there and imitate fickley known baby to lure women out, that's a top level predator. Using their own natural intuition and instincts against them to lure them out of safety to get to them. That's top level predator. That's not a friend. And if they're so friendly up here, not one credible witness I talked to ever felt warm and fuzzy feelings when they had an encounter, didn't even see it. It just all of a sudden, first thing they mentioned is that I was scared for my life. That's not a friend. It's just not that kind of place up here. It's so vastly different. I heard some different encounters from down the States, and I'm like, hey, I don't discount them, but listen, friendly forest friend is not even in my wheelhouse when it comes to Alaskan hairy man. It's just not. Everyone I've spoken to, which is a lot. I only have, a little less than 300 encounter videos on my channel. But I also talked to people who I, told them, I'll keep your encounter in confidence, just get it off your chest, because a lot of people will self-medicate and self-isolate, when they're not believed or listened to with their encounter. But anyway, so I've literally heard like 1,000+ encounters from people, and not a single one has ever said they had a warm, fuzzy feeling about it. It was always, they don't know why, but they felt like they had to run and hide. And it was that primal fear kicked in. Even one person I talked to that was rescued by a female when he was young and he was missing, and I was like, wow, that's crazy. I've never heard of a positive, And he goes, well, and because I ask every witness, what did you feel? I let their feelings be, regardless of what it is, I'm going to share what their feelings were, and he said he didn't feel warm and fuzzy. He felt despised and like they were getting rid of the problem because search and rescue was all over the place. And he felt like they were getting rid of the problem. There was too much scrutiny going on in that area on the Golconda River. And he felt like they're getting rid of the problem. He didn't feel like it was just out of some humanitarian mission to save him and out of the kindness of their hearts. He felt like they're getting rid of an issue versus genuinely trying to be a friend, because he said he still felt despised. He still felt hated, and they let their own feelings speak for themselves. When I share an encounter, I'm biased myself. I say shoot every one of them in the face, but I have, my own reasons for that. And I make that clear. But when I share someone's encounter, I don't do it through my views and my lens of how I perceive these creatures. I keep it in the tradition of like that oral history where this happened to so-and-so, here's approximately where it was at, here's what happened, and I leave it at that. I leave it in their words, regardless of what they say. I leave it from their perspective. I don't view it. I don't take it in and then share it through my perspective, because then that's not keeping it true. I share exactly what they felt, what they dealt with. Even if it's ignorance involved, where they can't operate a gun properly, or whatever it may be. It's everything they share with me. I share it. Outside of sometimes I may omit, like, a person who was part of the group that wasn't there, that I couldn't contact or whatever. But that doesn't affect the encounter. You see what I mean? Anyone who comes to me, and because I got to talk to them several times to get everything down, to get all the finer details. But if anyone comes to me and there's drastic differences every time I talk to them about the encounter, that they get dismissed and blocked. I don't have time for them, because the truth just rolls off the tongue. You don't have to do a bunch of and then backtrack and bounce around, and it changes every time you're just talking about it. That's just doesn't ring true. Now, grant you, sometimes after the first phone call, there's things, once someone's actually being heard, they may have forgotten little nuances about it. They're like a scream in the morning prior to whatever happened. Little things like that. Well, I totally understand, because a lot of people have held in the encounter for so many years because of fear of ridicule, that once they start unpacking it, little things come out later. Yeah, and that's no big deal. That's natural. But the encounter, the way it laid out chronologically and everything like that, if it bounces all over the place, I won't even showcase it, because obviously there's something going on there,
Yeah, definitely. Let's gonna go to the comments right here with what people saying real quick. Some saying hi, but if there's a question, I'll definitely read it to you. Okay, a native guy, native guy, thank you. Yeah, Mr. Show, you're right on time, bro. Stoked says hello all. Annette Minich, hello Annette. Little Wolf C, hi Don and Darren. Hey Little Wolf.
Hey, what's up?
Anthony Sanchez 1420 says hello guys from Yakima, Washington. Hello. Yeah. And then Tyson Lolito, how's it going, guys? Not too bad, Tyson. It's story time, man. We got Fred from Alaska here telling the stories. He can't really reach us on the through the internet, but we got him on the phone. So remember, guys, if you guys have any questions, go ahead and lay it out on the chat, and I'll relay it to him. You guys. Maddie the Baddie says hello to all.
Hey,
Hope you
man.
all stay warm during the show. What's up, Maddie? Thank you guys for joining. Thirsty 86. Oh yeah, Bigfoot. BCast 33 says 100% agree. If you have to outline your photos or videos trying to explain what you're looking at, probably pareidolia. I agree. Definitely.
Yeah, it means a lot more to the person who took it. That's, not being there, I don't know, some judgment on that. Evidentiary value is a different thing than, meaning something to somebody,
Yeah, for real.
Right.
I agree. Hello, Transource Rex. The Net Warrior 505. What's up, The Net Warrior? Crazy Coyote 1313. What's up, Crazy Coyote? Owl 131. Hello, Owl. Miss Jamie Begay 1097. Tuning in from Hurricane. Hey, what's up, Hurricane? Crazy Coyote 13 says, yep, Alaskan Bigfoot are responsible for multiple Air Force pilots getting MIA. They crash out there, search and rescued with just fine remains. They are the reason military kills them on military bases. Oh, what do you know about that, Fred?
Can neither confirm nor deny such things. When it comes to military stuff, I definitely feel that there's a lot of people that they're responsible for being MIA. And, that's another reason for the channel is just awareness, because, man, it's hard to put into words. There's a different energy up here, a different different vibe. Once you get out in remote Alaska, even if you got a personal locator beacon and e-perb, if you're in remote Alaska, you're 16 to 32 hours from rescue if the weather permits. Otherwise, I mean, it's not a guarantee, you know. And yeah, it's nowhere you want to be lost and alone. I tell you that much. And I always tell people who want to come up and go backpacking around and all that, don't go alone, and don't take your personal safety for granted. I've come across people who think bear spray will be enough. Well, I hate to break it to them. That works in maybe 7 out of 10 encounters with a bear. Other times, I've seen video footage of a bear just running through a huge cloud, big old cloud of bear spray, and it didn't stop nothing. You know, so you can't just count on that as your only deterrent. You got to make sure you got your personal safety on lock, and don't take it for granted. You know, there's a lot of people. I feel they feel they're too smart. That, you know, they're too smart to have to worry about being attacked by a bear, and that's just ignorance. You know, they're unpredictable. You can't rely on your own intelligence because you can't outsource your intelligence to that animal to recognize you mean them no harm. If there's no way to outsource that in the moment when a bear's charging at you at 40 feet away and that thing's 1,000 pounds, it don't give a flying rat's butt. You're done. You know, you got to be able to account for yourself. You know.
Yeah, definitely. We all agree with you right there, brother.
Yeah,
Definitely.
for sure.
Life is very precious. It's not a gamble right there at all. Definitely. Crazy Coyote says, be careful out there. Snowstorm areas are in Bay Coast. Bigfoot are looking for salt and iron, which is found in blood. Oh man, definitely. JP says, hello, what's up? What's up, JP? Crazy Coyote, Patriots and Seahawks, whip-de-doo. AZ Lyman has a question for you, Fred.
Yeah.
Does Fred investigate all around Alaska or just Dillingham?
Oh no, I don't live in Dillingham full time. That's where I'm from. So in our culture, when I was living in Dillingham, in our culture, we don't follow them. We don't chase them. It creates a bad omen, right? Because of the superstitious beliefs. And we never chased after anything. Since I started the channel, though, it probably accumulated. When I bought this Tahoe, it had under 70,000 miles, and my Tahoe now has 170,000 miles. So in the 3 years I've owned it, put on a lot of miles going all around the state where there's roads, and probably 1,500 miles on various machines, whether it be side-by-side, four-wheeler, snow machine, what have you. I do go all over the state. However, logistically flying within the state of Alaska from like Anchorage, which is south of me from where I live. I currently live in Wasilla, and that's just north of Anchorage, about 30, 40 minutes. And it's the Matanuska Valley, and there's about 40, 50,000 total population out here. But investigating, I do, but only when it's connected to the road system, because trying to fly in-state, like if I wanted to fly round trip back home to Dillingham, man, I spend just as much flying to Hawaii and like twice, 2-3 times, you know. It's insane what the logistical cost of getting around Alaska is. And so going to like a small village on a whim, you know, like to go check things out, that's virtually impossible. It's financially unattainable. You know, I'm just a one-man show. I mean, I have Squatch Bait who goes out with me every once in a while, or, you know, whoever goes out with me, by the way, by default is Squatch Bait. So, you know, there's been Squatch Bait Carl. He won't go anywhere with me anymore. He thinks I'm nuts because we got screamed at and paced out. And yeah, he doesn't go with me anymore. And then there's Squatch Bait Ryan, which the whole world knows him as Squatch Bait only, which I think is great. You know, because he's a buddy. And I mean, there's worse nicknames to be known by, but most people don't even know his real name. Oh. And then, you know, there's Squatch Bait Isaac. Anyone by default is Squatch Bait. I have been to several areas. Most of it is not publicized on the channel. I've only did on site a couple times. One was down Kenai in a guy's backyard. explaining, walking through where everything transpired when him and his neighbor shot one of these things and it tumbled down the hill and ran off. That whistle that on camera on that one is called Kenai Crazy. I forget the number, but towards the end of the video, there's a very sharp, distinct whistle that is not normal around here. And even on video, I was like, no, I don't like that whistle. And what was crazy about that one was when I was getting ready to get off camera at the end of the recording, I said, if anything interesting happens, I'm going to hit the record button again, just in case. But, I wasn't going to just sit there and you got a camera running, usually ain't really nothing going to happen. But it was an action camera, so all you had to do is hit record and start recording, And so I got done filming, and I walked down a little bit of the hill into the rest of the guy's backyard. And all of a sudden, behind me, uphill, about 60-ish feet, maybe tops, from where I was just standing, just out of sight, a loud whistle, repetitively, the kind of piercing whistle that you could just feel. Well, we ain't got critters around here that whistle that loud, And so instantly, I tried to turn the camera on, and the battery was dead. Okay, fair enough. I got 5 charged ones. I threw in a fresh battery, dead. All cell phone dead. Every electrical device we had that could potentially record, batteries were dead. And the property owner said, hey, I got game cams on the side of the house, and with us moving back here, they're recording, so that it should have picked that up. Those batteries were dead. There was all the SD cards and everything in his game cameras were all corrupted. And some of the footage I recorded earlier that same day on my SD card in the GoPro I had at the time was corrupted footage. It was real weird. And I was actually really fortunate that what I recorded as far as the encounter was still usable. And just crazy stuff like that, I don't know what it is about the electronics and them batteries dying. That happened on more than one occasion. And I've contemplated, getting a hand wound camera or some old school, like they used to use, where you just wind it up and let it go, something analog versus digital, and relying on a battery. But trying to find that stuff, forget about it.
I got a question.
I think there's energies involved, and like my encounter in 06, I at one point felt toyed with, and it felt like almost like they were soaking up that negative energy, and it was real weird. Again, that's just my own feelings on it. I got, outside of my anecdotal, experience, it doesn't have any evidentiary weight or what have you, but a lot of the encounters that people share with me, it really feels like that, and there's got to be some spiritual law of some kind that we've forgotten about, in relative safety over the years, where these things can't cross thresholds. You would think, like with my experience, they would have just smashed the place and snapped me and a bunch of other different people, but it's like they can't cross the threshold of an inhabited domain or something. It's real weird, even though they easily could. They're so massive up here. They're humongous. I'd sent you a series of pictures. That second one down, I believe it's standing there across a little creek, right? And it's a nighttime photo. You can still see it.
Oh yeah. I pulled it up right now. But real quick here, Darren had a question for you. Darren, go ahead real fast.
So what's your take on the whole paranormal side of Bigfoot? How do you perceive? Yeah, how do you look
go ahead,
at it?
Darren. Sorry.
How would you look at it when it comes down to Bigfoot?
Okay. He said that what's your thoughts, what's your views on the paranormal Bigfoot, and how would you go about it, and your thoughts on that? Like with the malfunction with the battery and the SD cards, because far as I know, this is my thoughts. What I know is that the skinwalkers, witchcraft, they have the ability to do that. And this is the first time hearing Sasquatch doing something like that. It's pretty wild. But yeah, go ahead, Fred.
So I haven't personally seen, outside of the camera issue and stuff, I haven't seen anything that would give me the impression like a skinwalker. I've heard some of the skinwalker stories and stuff. But I mean, I was unaware they affected cameras too. But it's happened more than once, as far as like influencing the camera and electronics. However, one time down on I was in the Copper River Valley, a little place called Kenny Lake, Miss Carol's place. This poor lady, you know, her husband ended up dying. He's buried on the property. She's vulnerable and alone, and the harassment kicked up, right? She started getting harassed shortly before her husband passed when he was in a vulnerable state, compromised, couldn't really defend the place, right? So they were getting hairy man activity, things being thrown on the roof, pounding on the walls, just general harassment, nothing like trying to break in the door or snatch anybody per se, but it was a regular harassment and terrorizing for her. You know, she's 80-some years old. Well, we had been down there a few times, showcasing the environment and place, but of course with her blessing. And on our third trip down there, it was me and Ryan, Squatch Ryan. It was not midnight sun type of daylight yet, but it was 11:15 at night, but it was like dusk, right? So plenty of light, but once you look into the trees, it's pitch dark. It's real shadowed, and you can't really make anything out in the trees. But with the light enough in the sky, you could see any open area. You can see clearly across the driveway and outhouse and all that. Well, I was sitting across from Miss Carol, and where I was sitting, I couldn't see out into the living room out the front window. But where Miss Carol was across from me, she could, and she was got this weird look on her face, and she's kind of moving back and forth, trying to figure out. I was like, "You okay?" She's elderly. I didn't make sure she wasn't having a stroke or something. I don't know. But she goes, "No, I'm trying to figure out where that light's coming from, but I don't have anything that color on in here." And I was like, "She goes, come here and sit here and look out and see if you could see it." And so we switched seats, and I sit down and I look out the window and I immediately see it. It's about 15-ish feet roughly away from the cabin, and it's just towards the top of the window from my perspective, right? And at the same distance up in the air. And I was like, "What is that?" And so got up and I immediately grabbed my 45 and stuck it in my pocket. And I didn't even think of the camera. It was like, what is it, right? Like, because it wasn't an obvious hairy man, and I had never dealt with orbs before, right? So I walk out the door onto the little steps that lead right to the driveway there, and as I'm standing there looking at this thing, it's like a plasma ball. It's like a salmon colored, that peaches pink kind of color, but plasma is like swirling around, but it's stationary, but the plasma shell or whatever itself is swirling around, but there's something defined in white inside, real defined. And I was focusing on that after, of course, taking a quick look around to make sure I wasn't being lured out, And so I'm watching this thing, and it starts moving to my left, and it's staying about the same height and distance away, and which is not quite across the driveway from where I was standing. So I paralleled it slightly behind it against the cabin, because then that way nothing can get behind me, And so as I'm walking, I'm trying to focus on what this, because whatever white was in there, it was very defined, but the way the swirl of that plasma type material or whatever was moving, I couldn't make it out. And I was just trying to get a glimpse of exactly what is that. And so as I'm moving to my left with this thing, it reached the point to where it got near the outhouse, right? And it only moved about 20 feet, 30 feet tops from when I first saw it and came out the door to where it stopped by the outhouse, right? So I stood. And it just so happened I had about 5 feet before the end of the cabin wall where I was paralleling it, right? And again, I took a quick look for my safety, to make sure nothing was trying to keep up on me or whatever. This thing started erratically moving pretty quick, but it was moving away and trying to move into the woods, right? And so I kept the same distance from it as it was moving away as I originally kept. Once I got to the outhouse, I stopped because this thing started shimmering like you would see tinsel on a Christmas tree, right? Started shimmering like that, like a cat lure, and started really erratically moving and bouncing around like it was trying to lure me into the woods. Hair stood up on my neck. I pulled that pistol out, and I was like, "What the hell?" And I started looking around, and I didn't even notice Squatch Bait followed me out, and he had an XBR rifle, you know, AR-10 basically, but all custom. And all of a sudden, he was like, "We should go inside now," and it startled the shit out of me, or crap out of me, excuse me. And I'm like, I realized he was there, and he goes, "We can't shoot that. We should go inside now." Just real cut and dry and just plain, you know. He wasn't like in a worried state or whatever. And I was like, hell yeah, let's get inside, because he was right. What are you gonna do? You can shoot a plasma ball, like, or an orb. Like I didn't even know what it was, let alone what I mean. It didn't really be in danger, but I still don't know what the hell that was, you know. And it was to this day, prior to that, I've heard experiences people had where orbs were involved or nearby, or where it could be considered that it was going on at the same time, but I've never experienced it myself until that day. And that was not unique to me. She goes, "Oh, that happens all the time." Oh, it was the orb. And she goes, "They're usually smaller and just red." And I actually
wow.
She sent me some security footage of that actually happening. This red orb comes out of the woods, goes along, and it's something moving on its own power, doing it whatever it was doing. But there's video footage of some of those that happened in the same spot. But yeah, it just the paranormal aspect. I like, people would ask me, "Oh, were they outright evil?" Like my experience in 06, and I was like, "Well, when we went out the door, I didn't see them dancing around a Ouija board before they attacked." Yeah, you know what I mean? Like, there was no portal that they crawled out of. I didn't see that myself, so I have no reference point for that. And so the paranormal part, I can't discount it, even though like the camera aspect of the batteries dying, I still can't explain that. However, something happened. I don't know if it's magnetic field related. I don't know if it's that energy. I don't know, but if I don't know if you've seen a map of ley lines. However, it seems like they're very prevalent in places of like gold mines and copper mines and ports, where these energy conducting materials seem to be. And I have a theory that they're the energy involved, a lot of these encounters happening in these areas, I don't know if it potentially like an energy they draw from. I still don't know. I haven't worked that out, but it seems odd that so many of these encounters happen around these ley line areas or areas of like gold mining. Through history, there's been a bunch of different accounts of prairie man being involved. And, going back in the history, and even in the modern days, like in 06, we were going up to Prospect. It was a gold mining area, so it's like, even on the Mulchatna River, there's people that go gold prospecting there. Harris Creek, so many encounter locations involve gold mining as well. Even down in Hope, they got gold mines down there. Up in Ruby, up off the Yukon River. Man, Nome, outside of Nome, Bering Sea Gold, they got that Discovery Channel show or History show, whatever the hell it is. But anywhere there seems to be all these gold deposits, the copper, the quartz, deposits with both in it, seems to be an area in which there's a heightened, not the only areas, but seems to be a heightened amount of encounter activity. And it just makes you wonder, because those are energy conducting materials. I wonder if that has something to do with it.
Yeah. Man, one of these days we'll find out. But maybe tomorrow, maybe when we go up there, if everything works out right. Definitely, I would like to see.
We'll send you first and let you report back.
Oh yeah. Someone in the comment sections are like, Chubba Yazi Sasquatch bait.
Right?
Yeah, Chubba reporting for duty. Oh man, heck yeah, man! That's one hell of a way to answer that question right there. That's right there. That's a good way to answer it. Well, let me read some of these. Go ahead. Yeah. That's a more fancier way to say I don't know, but I seen some crazy things. You know what I mean? And I seen crazy things as well. You and I both, and then. End of the day is I don't know. I don't know how that happens or how it came to be. I just saw it. But definitely agree with you right there. Let's see here. Okay, let's see. Read this question here. Okay, post bankruptcy, Malone says, "Just got here, but I heard and understand all too well about the isolating and self-medicating part because it's not known. To go with my own experiences. Chains up, everybody. Oh yeah, man. Yeah,
Yeah.
we're all
Yeah.
here for each other. You guys here? You guys want to talk about something crazy? Just Darren and I. We'll always give it ear. Then that Warrior 505. This is T. Had to update my screen name. How's the new name? Sounds double D. Sounds good. Sounds
Going
good,
on
T.
out there.
Sounds good. Yep. The Cedric Willie. Hey, what's up, buddy? Sorry I'm late.
Hey, what's up?
It's all good. Darren and I are here holding down the fort. Yudja says Sasquatch bait, and she does a laughing emoji.
Yeah, you might have to dress up like a female Bigfoot like they do in those Looney Tunes cartoons here in a bit or so. Put you out there in the woods.
Yeah, for real. Before we read that question, because it's gonna go into little people, but Fred, could you tell us about this night vision picture of a Sasquatch?
The one I just mentioned a minute ago.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, it was taken. It was a camera phone of someone's computer screen, right? So that came from back home near Snake Lake, and the encounter that had happened before that picture. This husband, wife, and child and their dog, they were down there camping, right? And this is remote Alaska. You know, you got to fly into Dillingham, which is remote. You can either get there by plane or boat. You know, it's not, there's no roads there, but it's remote. Then they went further remote from there, up to Snake Lake because, they're from there and whatnot. I don't want to, put him on blast. He had his encounter he put up on Facebook briefly, but, he took it down because for whatever reason. But, so this guy, his wife and kid and dog were out camping, and they'd been there one night, and they couldn't sleep well that first night. They just kept feeling something was off. And well, the next day, his wife was just taking their dog for a walk, and she had a firearm with her, in case it was. And they weren't far from where they were camping, middle of the day, and all of a sudden the dog takes off into the brush, and it sounds like some kind of tussle, right? And all of a sudden, the dog comes running back and stinks real bad, and it was like this greasy kind of film on it, and with the sounds that this creature was making, she got startled, and they retreated back to camp, which wasn't far away, and they were trying to wash this dog because it stunk bad, and this grease just wouldn't come off even with Dawn dish soap. It was real greasy kind of material. They're trying to figure out what the hell. Then all of a sudden they saw it in the tree line because their son got their attention. His son was little, just under 10 years old, what have you. They said, "What is that? What is that?" It's right there. And they all look and they see it, and the dog runs into the tent. They all retreat into the tent together, and they have the firearms. And he's like, "Cat, we shouldn't have cornered ourselves in the tent, because now they could hear it moving around the tent." And it was starting to get dark. And he was like, "Man, we can't just sit here all night with this going on, And so what he ended up doing is he had an auto start for his truck. And so he hit the alarm, but, first the panic for the alarm, and it didn't chase it off at all. They still heard it moving around, and it actually started breathing real heavy and making grunts. And then he hit the auto start to start the truck. And, in hopes that would do it and chase it away so they could brake for the truck, jump in, and get the hell out of there. Well, it was after about 10 minutes of the truck running, it goes quiet. So he peeks out with a flashlight and a gun, and he's not seeing anything. So they all make a break for the truck together, son and dog in there, wife all jump in the driver door. He jumps in behind him and puts it in gear to leave, and he's gunning it, and this thing ain't going anywhere. It's a brand new F-150, and it's just peeling out. It's not doing nothing. And his son screams, and that's when he looks up in the rear view because he hit the brake like what the hell? Something ain't right. And he's looking for his little 4-wheel drive switch and all that. And I mean, it's hysteria. It's chaos. And looking in the rear view with the brake lights, he knows the reflection of this thing holding onto his bumper. And then he like, of course, put it back in drive and done it again. and it still wasn't able to really move. It was dragging it a little bit, but even in four-wheel, he wasn't really making much progress. And it hit the brake and honked the horn and gunned it, and was able to, do enough stop and go to break free and peels out onto the road, and was like, "Holy crap!" And everyone was okay and everything. He goes, "You know what? I'm going to circle back and get a picture of this thing." And that's what he did. He circled back, and it had crossed this little creek and was about, I don't know, probably 30, 40 feet at the most from where he had stopped the picture. And it was reported 12 foot tall, almost 6 feet wide. And you could just look at the photo. That thing is massive, and didn't give a crap, And so it's like that, that's kind of what Alaska could be like at times. And also, gosh, there was how many photos did I send you? Like 4? Right?
5. Yeah. Yep. 5 photos.
What was the photo below that one?
Oh man, I downloaded all in order. So I got one picture of the big guy, like a blurry photo, him standing with the smaller trees, like really wide guy, dark
Sure.
figure.
Tell you about that.
Okay.
Screenshot. So up off the Curyung River in the interior of Alaska, Yukon Delta, Kuskokwim area, and these miners flew in on helicopter because to stake a claim on a mine, they have to have certain requirements by the state, to claim it. And so in the video footage, this guy lands in a helicopter and walks over, and in the footage you see him walking, and he's just doing his thing. Helicopter landing, they really typically don't have to worry about a bear, so he wasn't overly worried about wild animals. And so he goes and posts required documentation of a site and all that was required by law. And in the video footage, as he turns around, he films a helicopter a little bit, and you could tell he's just holding the camera. He's not looking through the camera because he's walking over, the vegetation, getting back to the helicopter. But in that incidental footage, that thing was in the background. And in the footage, you could see it move. And I tell you what, talking about creepy, because those trees were measured after the fact, later on down the line or whatever. Those trees were 12 foot tall.
Oh shit. Oh, sorry. But
yeah. And so that gives you an idea that thing was massive. And in the footage, I originally had it on the channel, right? And I had it the original, and then I had played back with enhanced and stabilized, where the horizon right at the creature was stabilized so you could see what it was doing versus it, just being the, jumbled footage of, no image stabilization kind of camera that was recorded on. Well, in the stabilized version, you could see this thing duck down a little bit, and it's actually holding a piece of tree in it would be its left hand. And you can see it swing that part of the tree it had in its hand as it's ducking down and squatting. Now, we put that up, and I shared the guy's encounter, and within like 6 hours of posting that, the owner of that footage got back a hold of me, and he didn't like the way I presented it. And his encounter, I laid out verbatim what he shared. And so the owner of the footage got mad at me about not doing his whole life story that he had happened to share with me. And I was like, I'm not a documentarian and a autobiographer. I'm just sharing the Sasquatch encounter, the incidental footage and what you dealt with in the area. And he didn't understand what I was trying to do. And instead of having a back and forth with the guy, I just gave him his footage back, and I pulled that video. But that's a screenshot from that footage of the incidental recording on that camera. Man, yeah, that thing is massive.
Yeah.
18, almost 20 foot tall.
Wow.
Do you think that was a six-toed giant or a lot bigger, huh?
Well, the six-toed giants and mountain giants we have up here, the six-toed, six fingers, they have a greenish-gray skin and look more like ogres or trolls. They look a lot more, far less hair. I had one person report a mountain giant to me, and it was someone I grew up with, someone I respected. So I know he wasn't just personal attention. It's just not his style, but he told me that he was in the Wood River Mountains, which is Wood Chick Chick State Park, right? He was by Third Lake, which is Lake Believe, and he said he was up on this knoll and he was glassing, and he was glassing for a bull moose. He was just looking at the different areas of muskeg and swampy ponds where they hang out to find himself a moose, and then pack it up and stalk after it. And he had this humongous spotting scope that a friend had given him, and he said he was standing around and he noticed something moving. It was about a mile out, and it was by a tree line across this, on the other side of the valley near where the tree line started and some muskeg was. And muskeg is just a tundra-type swampy area, right? And, small vegetation, no trees really, because they're too alkaline and trees are dwarfed and they just don't grow. Anyway, so he's looking, and he said this thing was greenish gray, had tusk coming out from its lower jaw, up, curling up, almost it reminded him of the pigs on Star Wars, Empire Strikes Back, whatever that is, or Return of the Jedi in the beginning, where Han Solo's frozen in the shit, and the Rancor, all that, all those guards with the tusks that come up from the bottom like a wild boar. He said it had tusks like that. Its lower jaw, jaw area was protruded out further than anything he'd ever seen, but not like a full muzzle. It just protruded out a little further. Had a very small nose relative to its size of its head, a little bit pointed ears, and he said down its back, the hair, the way it came down, it reminded him of like a razorback hog. But outside of the hairline coming down, if he hadn't seen what it was, he would have thought it was a ponytail, right? The rest of it greenish gray, real long arms. Couldn't see its feet very much at all because of how it was moving in the distance and all the vegetation in the way. But he saw its right arm, and its forearm was real long. And he said there was a hair line that ran from the elbow down and it wrapped around the wrist. So on the outer part of the elbow, there was a hairline, but it was only on the outer part from the elbow down, and then it wrapped around the wrist. Kind of like a, bracelet, but it was longer hair towards the ends. Pointed fingernails, 6 fingers. He could see that part clearly because it was reaching over, moving vegetation or doing something. And all of a sudden, he hears the bush plane coming from the distance, and he kind of glances back and sees it's about a mile away and up in the air. And he looks back, and as he looks back through the spotting scope, I continue watching this thing because he's thinking, oh, that plane's going to see this clear as day. Well, what had happened is this thing collapsed to the ground, just dropped down, and that hair going down its back stood up, and it mimicked and mocked the spruce trees that it was surrounded by. And if he hadn't seen it drop down, he wouldn't have been able to pick it out. Like if he had just randomly started looking then, he wouldn't have seen it because of how well camouflaged it was. The greenish gray skin camouflaged it perfectly. He knew it was there only because he saw it collapse down. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to pick it out. And then once the plane passed and some time had passed by, he doesn't remember exactly how much time went by because he was kind of focused on staring through the scope and like whoa, kind of in shock about what he was watching. Then it just stood up and then meandered on out of his view when it went around one of the mountains. And that's the only report of the mountain giant, but they've always been reported with 6 fingers, 6 toes, and looking ogre-esque. And even the 6-toe track I found, it was about 24 inches long. We did not go after looking for it because it was back in like 94, 95 when we saw that. Actually, same area, Sunshine Valley, which is, as a crow flies, just a handful of miles from where this guy had spotted this creature. But when we saw the track in, I believe it was 94, some of those years bleed together, but we had saw this, fresh track. The track obviously came from the stream, Bear Creek, and the track we could see on the gravelly sand was fresh. It was still wet. You could see the water droplets, and it was a deep impression, 24 inches long. The heel was like almost 10 inches wide, and the ball of the foot was I mean, damn near a foot wide itself, and it was 2-foot long track with 6 toes, very defined, very, very crisp. And that's the only one we saw because of how it moved. It moved in like you would want to move, like, running from somebody with a bloodhound, so to speak. It was moving in the creek as much as possible from what we could tell. And the other following track, all you could see was it was up on the mossy tundra part, and you could just see an impression. There was no definition to that other track, but there was, close to 15 foot in between those 2 tracks. And once we saw that, one of my cousins was like, "Oh man, should we go looking and see what that?" Hell no. And we went the other direction because, again, in our culture, we never sought after it. Yeah, you know what I mean? We always went the other way.
Yeah. For good reason. For good reason.
Very good reason. Yeah.
Woo, woo. Okay. So I brought up the other picture, the close up of the big guy.
Whoa.
Okay, so that
damn.
was sent to me by someone who lived on Kenai Peninsula, and so for a while he had weird occurrences happening on his property. He had some rabbits that they were keeping killed. He had some chickens go missing. At night, he figured fox or bear was somehow, black bear or something, was getting into the rabbits and the chickens. He like didn't invest much time or thought into what was actually doing it, right? But when he would go into his bedroom at night, he always had the curtains open usually because his bedroom was on the 2nd floor of the cabin he has. And never having any issues not being in his wheelhouse, but he always felt watched. And he was like, "What the hell? Why do I get creeped out at night, only at night?" And he'd look outside and not see nothing. So what he did was, after a bunch of times of this creepy feeling happening, and it was not all the time he went up there at night, here and there he would get that feeling, and it was always different. Just that some over creepiness where you just feel like you want to run kind of feel. And so finally he had taken a game camera, put a game camera up, nothing. So what he ended up doing was disabling the infrared light for nighttime pics. He disabled that. So if it was triggered, there would be no infrared. It would just take a picture, and he left his curtains open. And so the light you see reflecting off this creature's face and in its eyes is from his bedroom light. And he went in there, got the creeps, and left the room. And that's the photo it took the next morning when he went and looked. That's what was looking in at him.
Wow. Whoa, man.
That is a face that only a mother can love right there. Check him out. Kind of looks like one of my uncles, though, for real.
Oh, wow, man. That's a real chilly photo.
Darren said it's a very chilling photo. He's feeling somehow. I think he's feeling like he's being undressed. I'm just kidding. Oh man, this is such a good photo, man. Thank you for sharing, man. Woo-wee. Oh man, this is why everyone on the res closes their window as well. Just because, just like this as well. Oh man. Oh shit. Okay. Darren, you got any question before I go to the comments? Because there's some questions there.
Was there any footprints to this photo, or was there any hair or anything like that along with this photo? If it's looking inside the window, there has to be something.
Darren's asking, was there any tracks that go with this picture?
Which one? The facing the window?
Yeah, when he was looking in the window, did they check for tracks?
It was pointless because he had 3/4 minus gravel. There was nothing
frozen.
Nothing to find that he could, would mount anything as far as evidential.
Yeah. Yep. That's the reality of when it's cold outside. It's not good to look for tracks. We got a K native guy ask. He said, "Hey Fred, do you have any little people stories that really stick out to you in Alaska?"
I showcased a few on the channel. The one that really stands out to me is actually reported to me by an Alaskan state trooper. And I've known this guy forever. And he got a hold of me out of the blue a couple of years ago. I won't say where he was at, but he was doing his when you become a trooper, your first 2 years as a state trooper up here in Alaska, you got to do your remote village team, right? So they'll be sent to a big enough village that requires a trooper to be there, like, Dillingham or Bethel, or, there's various places, but he ended up in this village, and, he was close to the end of the time he had to do there, and he was actually going to extend his time where he was going to be, and make that his post for a little while longer than the mandatory 2 years, because then they can select a place after that where they'd like to patrol Anchorage or Matanuska Valley or what have you, Denali, type thing. So one of his neighbors where he happened to be on this post was an alcoholic, right? And periodically this neighbor would come banging on his walls asking him for booze, and he'd always have to run him off saying, I don't drink, and all that kind of thing, right? So he wakes up to this banging on one side of his wall, and it's usually the side, it's the same side that this neighbor that he had the road would come and bang when he was trying to ask every neighbor for alcohol or whatever, and he yelled, "Hey, I ain't got no alcohol, damn it, you already know." And he was a little frustrated, right? And so it came and banged on the second wall. And he goes, "That's different. That's not this guy's typical behavior." Because being a trooper, they pay attention to that kind of little nuances and differences and whatever. And then as he was standing up to figure out what the hell's going on, he throws on his robe, and it bangs on the third wall. And he was like, "What the hell?" So he grabbed the shotgun out of the gun holder that he had in the hallway as he was going towards the front door. And as he's making sure he's got ammunition in the shotgun, it bangs on his front door hard. I mean, he was like, he's never seen that heavy metal Arctic entryway kind of door bang and shake like that, right? Mm-hmm. And so he yells, "That's the state troopers, blah, 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 blah. You're trespassing and something or another, this law jargon, that you would typically hear from law enforcement." And it goes quiet, and he hears sound going off the porch. And his house is elevated a little bit, about 4 feet off the ground. So when you step out, there's a small porch, and then the stairway goes down to the gravel pad, the landing where his cars are parked. Well, it so happens the way he parked his cars was the whole driveway and the gravel pad was open. And it was a fairly large area, about, 60 foot in diameter of just open gravel area, because he had turned his vehicle around, had a trailer for snow machines and all that kind of stuff. Well, he comes out on the porch, and this is, not quite full on summertime, but it was still really light. And it was about 3 a.m, and it was light enough to where he could see this figure about, 3.5 foot tall, standing there. And he said it looked like a little goblin. Again, greenish gray skin. It had clothing, but it was like old leather, real worn old leather. Had really long arms, really long fingernails, right? Almost touching the ground. And it had a hook nose like you'd think the old Wicked Witch of the West would have, right?
Yeah.
And said its head looked really small compared to the size of its nose and the size of its jawline, right? And he started yelling, "Alaska State Troopers, you're trespassing, show me your hands." And they were right there, but he was just going through the, protocol because he didn't know what else to do. He'd never seen anything like this, so he's kind of trying to figure it out as things are going, but he's yelling commands, right? And so he raises the shotgun in the air because he had it at a low ready, as he put it, and then raised it up in the air a little bit and racked it. And when he did that, this thing turned into 5, identical 5 of them, boom, and I'll start moving in a circle, and that freaked him out. And he shot up in the air. So they all disappeared, and then he heard the footsteps of a single one walking off the gravel, and he saw the brush move as it moved away. And that one stands out to me.
So this one, okay. So this one being just turned to 5 just to like confuse him.
Yeah, right? Like a confusion thing,
Oh snap! Wow, that is a very, very.
He said they were identical, and they were shuffling around, kind of like you would see the guys moving the cups around for pick out where the ball is or whatever. I mean, he was like they was shuffling, almost like trying to confuse him on which one was the real one in case he shot. But then when he shot, they all disappeared, gone out of view, like disappeared. and
Wow.
he could hear the footsteps of it walking away.
My God.
And he was like, "What should I do with that?" And I said, "Put it in a report, turn it in." And he was like, "Oh, geez, I'd lose my job and pension," which is another thing that I think is really messed up, because they're kind of pigeonholed to what they know and what, people above them will allow to be reported. I don't think it's a concerted effort to hide things on that level, on a state cop level or whatever. I think it's those above them going, "Hey, you don't want to put that in a report. You're going to lose your pension. You're going to put in the psych ward, that kind of thing." And I think it's more of a peer pressure versus a concerted effort to suppress any information.
Yeah. Yep.
Definitely.
It'll be one way trip to the nut house. That's for sure.
Yeah, but you should. I was being such a smart ass when I was like, "Put it in the report, man." Turn that thing in, like, well, it was, he just, he laughed it off. He goes, "No, seriously, what I do." And so I made some calls for him or whatever, and we got, culturally what, you should do in those instances, which we put a piece of dry fish out there, and when you put the dry fish down, and, and tell them, "Hey, this is all I have for you. You're not allowed back after you take this," that kind of thing. And I hadn't had a problem and called back since. So I'm guessing it worked. So I told him, if it continues, let me know.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a crazy thing, and the little people, they're known to dance under the Northern Lights. That's one of the things where they'll have a high activity going. So when you ask me about did I whistle the Northern Lights, that picture, that last one I sent you from my backyard, that was 2 winters ago.
Beautiful.
No, a little over a year and a couple months ago, I took that from my backyard, right? Which was in the moment, man. The energy involved in that was crazy. It was surreal. The way that, blues weren't picked up too well in that picture at all, but the purple and the green was, right?
Mm.
And just that energy involved, right, is just so surreal. It's almost magical feeling, mystical. But as far as little people are concerned in the Northern Lights, they're known to they're said to dance underneath them, and a lot of the times that the time frame of the year where the auroras are most active naturally is during the time frame of I would say late November through end of January, beginning of February up here, right? That's when the auroras are most naturally active. Well, during those times, January 17th in our culture, you're supposed to cover your mirrors on January 17th because it is said that that's the night that the veil is thinnest between our worlds, where the little people live they come to our world, but they're on the other side of the veil, so to speak, right? And on that night, it's supposed to be the thinnest the veil is during the year. And if you don't cover your mirrors, they could use the mirror as a way to steal your soul or steal you to take you and eat you. And they're also told that, or we're told that they dance underneath the Northern Lights. And that's another way of luring people away from the group or as a small group into the woods to go see who's dancing over there, right? People watching the Northern Lights or whatever, be aware. If you're in Alaska going to do that, don't go after the little looking figures off in the distance dancing. It could be the last thing you do.
Yeah, definitely. Well noted right there, everybody.
Wow. Yep.
Woo,
That's
heck
definitely chilling. Yep.
Yep.
Definitely chilling.
Well, and there's a multitude of things too, like down southeast, Kushtaka. I mean, that's a shapeshifter. They could shapeshift into anything. There's a guy down southeast. He's since sold his cabin. What he ended up doing, he would go to his cabin and he had little crab traps that he would set. Because it's right there connected next to the ocean where his cabin was, and he would set these crab traps and he would pick them every day and he was getting skunked, and that wasn't normal. He'd catch some dungeons or something, but he wasn't catching anything. And he noticed on the second day there was a really large sea otter, right? And it was nearby enough to where he started chucking rocks at it because he figured that little bastard's getting in there and getting my crab, And he was upset about it and chucked a few rocks at this thing, and all it did was become aggressive enough. I mean, to where, and it was larger than a normal one would be, and that shocked him too. But how aggressive it turned on him, it shocked me more. So he stopped messing with it and got his ass out of there and just boat and went to his cabin. Well, that same night he threw the rocks, he was looking out his front cabin window, and his cabin was this small one. It was like 10 by 14, 10 by 16, just a little, stove, right-in structure with a wood stove. Not much to it, right? It's not like a traditional log cabin, so let's be clear about that. But it was up on pilings because of southeast, it's a lot of it's a real steep, fjord-like area. And as he's looking out the window at dusk, he sees that big otter by his skiff, and he's like, thinking, oh no, don't push my boat out and chew the rope, and I won't have a way out of here kind of thought. And as he's thinking that, he grabs his rifle and he goes, you know what, I'm just going to shoot this thing because obviously I made an enemy. I don't need to worry about that thing every time I'm thinking about it. Well, he opens the door to shoot this sea otter, and when he does, it screams at him, and that threw him off because sea otters don't scream in this way. It was like a banshee, he said. And so he jumped back inside and slammed the door and starts looking out the window, holding his rifle, and this thing starts running up the trail towards his cabin, right? And as soon as it clears the beach and gets up on, into the grass and the path and the dirt path coming up and within the tree line and stuff, it starts morphing and gets real big. And it took on the shape of like sea otter, but like half man, half otter, but like 12 foot tall. Massive, and just screaming that whole time like a banshee running at his cabin. It ends up coming alongside, smacks against the cabin real hard and jars the whole place where he was like, holy crap. And then it came alongside the higher side of it, towards the upper part of the hill. It pushes the cabin over. And he was fortunate because when he woke up, the fire he had going in that stove, the wood stove he had in there, was actually pinning his clothing down on the one side, and it had that fire not been diminished to the point it was, so it got the whole place on fire, right? Mm-hmm. And so he was knocked unconscious during the place tipping over and all that, and when he came to, there's a wood stove, and he had to get himself from underneath it, because his clothing was pinned and part of his arm was a little bit, and we ended up, the otter, the Pushtakal was gone. But, he sold that property as quick as he could. Warned the buyer that, hey, I'm just selling it. There's crazy stuff happening around there. They just laughed it off and took his sale price, which was real cheap because he was getting the hell out of Dodge. He even included the boat and stuff. But he moved away from Alaska. He won't even, he doesn't even go to city parks. He stays in a very highly populated area and will never return to Alaska. And those are his words.
For good reason. For good reason. Choose life. Choose life.
Yeah. And there's been several people I've talked to that'll never come back to Alaska because of, their encounter where they're, hairy man. And I think it's not necessarily that there is a hairy, well, for them, I think it's the shock of knowing that, wow, hairy man is real. You know what I mean? And just the fear they experience during their encounter, it's too much. And so they can't be around it anymore. That's why I think some people who have an encounter together, it splits them apart. Like me and my uncle and cousin, like my uncle since passed, and my cousin is not long for this world either, but it broke us apart. We stopped talking. And part of it was the trauma involved. So every time you see him, you relive it. I think that's a wedge. And also, a lot of, they didn't want to be a part of it. And so there's separation there to where it sometimes turns into denial. And they won't admit to what was going on. Because after that experience in 2006, I was running around telling everyone with a set of ears, hey, watch out on the Neahkuk River. They're out to get us and stuff, And it can be a divisive thing for people who go through that in a small group or even family.
Yeah. Could you tell us that?
And force them apart just because of the trauma involved and not wanting to relive it every time you see that person.
Yeah, Fred. Could you tell us about that? What happened in 2006? I'm sure the viewers would love to hear.
Very briefly. It's a pretty long overall.
Oh yeah, probably the second time we get you back in.
I'll abbreviate. So in 2006, actually it started in 2004. we were going to go up to Nuyakuk for gold prospecting, right? And so, but it took a couple of years logistically to get like a portable sluice and all these other things to make it easier, because you can't just fuck a bunch of shit up there. It's 248 river miles from Dillingham, right?
Hmm.
And so you got to go up to Nushagak to the Nuyakuk and all that. It's involved, you know. And with my uncle at the time being an elder, going upriver, traveling on the water in Alaska, it gets cold. So we stopped in Nustuyahawk for a day, and then actually a couple days. So in 2006, when we finally made the trip, preparation started in 04. 2006 is when we left on the trip, and we left on September 13th, which is the day after my birthday, right? Because I asked my uncle, hey, can we spend my birthday in civilization so I could, go hang out with the buddies and whoop it up a little bit. And so he agreed to that. So we left Dillingham the 13th. And because of, being cold on the river or whatever, it took to the 17th to get up on the Nuyakuk, right? And so when we arrive on the Nuyakuk, it's hours before, sun goes down and gets dark. Took the time to unpack everything. My uncle made like a salmon chowder, salmon stew. And this place, 8-foot square, small, little 50 style trailer attached to the back of it. It was all blacked out. And the place was the old salmon counting tower little station. So the people who would stay there, they would literally come out for their shift. They'd climb this little tower that's right next to the river, and the water's crystal clear. You see it at the bottom easy. And they would literally count individual salmon as they're running up the river. A very archaic, like old school way of counting fish, But anyway, that's what the place was there for. But it hadn't been used for that in over a decade because they switched to LiDAR and all that other stuff. Well, anyway, so we're using this dried-in shell of a place for a base camp for this prospecting mission my uncle was on, because he wanted to stake a claim if it was worth time. Well, we ate the chowder and we unloaded everything into this little place, and it was about half hour after dark, and they're playing cribbage at the table, and they got this Coleman lantern hanging over their little card table. And again, 8-foot squares, not very big, And I had bought a 870 Remington shotgun. It's custom, rifled barrel, bowstring sights. It was going to be my brush gun. And on the way up the river, on that trip up, I had shot a couple times at some ducks, but I missed, and I was adjusting that rear ghost ring sight, right? And, again, half hour after dark, and it wasn't full on pitch black yet, but pretty close. All of a sudden, the whole place just kind of creaks. It's makes this weird noise, and it wasn't wind, because we would be able to tell if it was the wind, and it was like weird. So when I looked over to my left where my cousin was sitting, he was sitting in front of this little window, and these two windows that were in the place mirrored each other on opposite sides. The one, when you come inside the door, is immediately on the left. It's 18 inches tall, 24 inches wide. It was taken from an old school somewhere, you know what I mean? But between the top of his shoulder where he was sitting and the top of the window, I saw darkness move. And it startled me, and he jumps up. He's like, "That's not funny." He said, no, I saw movement. And we figured it's a bear. Because we're on the Nuyakuk River. It's a salmon spawn out, we figured it's a salmon river. So we assumed it's probably a big bear. He grabbed the 30-06. I had that shotgun, and we had a 1,000,000 kilowatt power spotlight, 6-volt battery, old school, right? But it was still fresh battery, it was bright. And we swung the door open ready for this bear. We didn't see anything, and I ran immediately to the right, to the riverbank side, which would be the side that I saw the movement, and there's nothing. And we're like a step and a half at the most outside this door. And this place is a chintzy case. You got to understand, it's a 2x4 construction with 5/8 plywood. Simple, basic, dried in, nothing to it, and it's built on skids. Because in remote Alaska, you can't have permanent structures on state land. So as we step out, it's about straight little trail, 20 feet to the riverbank, where it drops down about 6-7 feet to the little landing where we had the skiff tied off. And we panned to the left once we checked the right side to make sure the bear wasn't there. And we stayed a little close to the door initially, because if the bear charged, we wanted to be able to duck inside, have some kind of barrier between us and this, what we thought was a bear at the time. But when I panned that light, because I'm holding my shotgun and I'm holding, the light, kind of like those old school cop shows would show. Yeah, because he had the 30-06, I think, better chance with that, with a bear or whatever, unless it got real close, then, shotgun beats anything if it's chewing on you, right? So as I pan to the left, the tree line away from the river is about 50 yards away. And as I pan over there, it's almost a 90-degree turn from if you step right outside the door and turn 90 degrees to the left is about where we saw these 3 sets of eye shine just outside of the tree line. And they were like bench post markers, man. They were huge eye shine, 3 sets. And these things were massive, big, hairy, man. You could see them easy, right? Yeah. Immediately, we're right back inside the shack. The only thing for a doorknob was this little J-hook that hooked into an eyelet. That's what kept the damn thing shut, right? That was our only security as far as the door. But on that, mirrored from where he was sitting, the opposite side of that little structure, which again, 8-foot square, and that 50-style little big-looking trailer attached to the back of it as a blacked-out sleeping area, because every little window in that trailer was boarded up. As you know, because land of the midnight sun, you're counting salmon, you ain't going to get much sleep if there's daylight constant, right? So anyway, there was just a little curtain divide in between the two, and that curtain wasn't even attached because, again, it had been over a decade since they used that place. But so we get inside the door, and he's off my left shoulder, and the butt of the 30-06 is on the floor, and he's holding the barrel, and kind of like you would a paddle, right? And when I hit that J-hook shut, I'd set down the spotlight, just, basically dropped it, and I was holding the shotgun in my left hand by the pistol grip, so I offhanded, and I hit that J-hook, and it was like my ears were muffled instantly when I did that. It was like your ears didn't pop when you got off a flight, and everyone who's talking sounds like they're in a jar 20 feet away. It was real weird, but it was constant, consistent throughout the whole night that everything happened. So as we're standing there, I'm like, there's 3 hairy men out there. You're like, I'm freaking out, because usually they would duck and hide, It wasn't the first time we've seen them out in the wild, but they usually try to, diverge their eyes, they divert and they hide their face or whatever, so they're not being spotlighted. These ones didn't give a flying rat's ass. And that was odd. Like, not that we're, ferryman experts, but in years past we've had our experiences and they'd always hide their eyes or whatever. Anyway, so I'm talking to my uncle, who's just right in that little entryway into that little cubby area, as I call it, because it wasn't very big in there either. And I'm like, there's a hairy man out there. And I look to my cousin, and all this is happening real fast. You got to understand, it's taking me way longer to explain it. I turned to my cousin, and I was asking him, you saw what I saw. I was trying to get confirmation that I wasn't losing my mind. And all of a sudden, he just, in an instant, he's underneath that card table where they were just playing cribbage. And, the way he went under there, he knocked the chair out of the way and stuff, and he was under that card table. It looks like he was having a seizure, because he had a death grip on the barrel of that 30-06, and his teeth are constantly showing his teeth, and he had this crazy expression on his face. His eyes are open, and initially I was just like, what the hell? I thought he was having a seizure or something, and he was wetting his pants, and it was just all messed up. We looked down at him and looked at each other, me and my uncle, and then we looked down at him again, and we noticed that he's got this anxious expression, and he's kind of how he's looking. We realize he's looking over at that opposite window, and so we both turn at the same time and look, and then that's when I saw what I saw of its face in the window. I only saw from the bottom of its nose to the top of its eyebrow. It was huge. Gray skin, super wrinkled, like weathered upon weathered, looked ancient. Eyes were about a foot apart, and they looked like big black translucent marbles. And from the lantern light, there was a slight bit of glow to them, like eye shine. There was the slightest bit of red in them, and that's what gave them depth, other than just looking like a shiny black marble, right? Mm-hmm. And when I first turned and looked and saw it, I was looking down at my cousin, and then it turned and looked at me. And when it looked at me, in an instant, I knew I was food. It was like I already knew in my DNA. It was already there. It was familiar feel, but I never felt it before, if that makes sense. It's real weird. Yeah. The shock that went through my system, it was like every nerve fiber in my body was trying to run away, but it was stuck in my skin. It was like an electrical shock, hard. And this thing furrowed its brow like this, gave me this look of like disgust and like, I got you, that's the impression I got. I was like, I got you. And it I mean, of course, it freaked me out, like, real bad. And I'm holding the shotgun still offhanded. And I don't even have the butt stuck up to my shoulder or nothing. I just got the pistol grip in my left hand and the plump part of it in my right. And this thing started moving out of view of the window. And I figured it's so massive, it's got to be outside the wall. So it was like an autopilot response. I shot 3 times, just thump, thump, thump. And because of the pressure, all I heard was a thump, thump, thump. And I felt the concussive, the shots going off. But it wasn't like ears ringing like you naturally would be, right? And instantly there's a scream. Simultaneously, the place shifts a couple feet, almost took me off my feet. And, the lantern swinging, it's chaotic. And I thought this thing was going to throw us in the river. But I really did. I thought I was going to be swimming. So I ended up, like, in a panic. I'm like yelling for help, in those moments, I ran. I put that one chair in front of the door for I don't know why. It was going to do no good, but in the mind, it works weird, right? So I put the chair by the door like that was going to stop anything, and then I moved the other one back, and I stopped that lantern from swinging because it was swinging so hard. I thought it was going to fall, whatever. But I tried to get the 30-06 from my cousin, but he was still locked up, and him wetting his pants and his gun loaded. I didn't want an accident to happen, so I left it alone. And I'm looking, I'm just panic stricken. I didn't know what the hell to do. I'm yelling at my uncle for help. He just basically sat down in that little cubby area on one of the cots and clammed up initially. So I took that other chair and put the back of it towards that little opening that led into that cubby area, and I ended up sitting there. Of course, I grabbed ammo. I already had a bunch of ammo in my pockets and stuff too, but sat in that chair and had to pump that lamp because there was a Pullman lantern, white gas. You had to pump it up.
Yeah.
It was hard, man. I sat there for over a handful of hours, and the only way I could stop shaking was to I resigned myself to death. I was a dead man. I wasn't going to make it. And so as I sat there with all these different scenarios playing out, how they're going to crush the place and smack me against the tree, and that would be the end of it.
Yeah.
I'd have to periodically, when that lamp started dying down, I would have to try to let go of the shotgun. It was so hard to let go of the gun and reach up and half stand and try to pump this stupid lantern, because you got to understand, in order to get enough force, you got to put 2 hands on it basically, and that was so hard to do, let go of a gun in that situation. But I kept doing it repetitively, and it was dead quiet, after the shots and everything calmed down. That scream it let out, by the way, was so loud that what was left of that salmon chowder on the Coleman stove, little Coleman stove on the little counter area, it rang like a tuning fork. And that was with the earplug sound, muffled. It was so loud, and the way, the power of that scream after I shot through the wall was so, man, you felt it through your body, and that, I remember ringing like a tuning fork. But, so sitting there, if I think about it, I could still smell the mossy floor and the old, drip oil stove, fuel oil on the floor, Anyway, so I sat there for hours, and I kept trying to engage with Uncle, and what responses I got was disassociation, the fishing prices this year were horrible. We didn't get good times. It was like he was ignoring it away kind of thing. And I'm like, I just shot this damn thing, someone help me, and my cousin, after about 5-6 hours or whatever it was, he started mumbling stuff incoherently at first, right? But he started moving around. He was coming back, as I call it. And, finally, he started saying cohesive stuff, coherent, where I could understand what he was saying. We could understand each other. And I helped him up, and we're getting him a change of clothes. And I'm encouraging him. I'm like, I shot it. It ran away. I got it. Don't worry. We're safe now. Even though I didn't know. I was just trying to, inspire him to get up. And got him up, got him change clothes, and I was talking to him. I was like, did you see what I saw? I was still trying to make sure he saw the 3 sets I shot, and I didn't, what have you, right? And I asked him, how in the hell did you end up under the table? And he said, when we came in the door and I shut it, and I hit the little hook, from his vantage point off my left shoulder, he looks out that window. It was further back away from the window, and it showed his teeth. And it just did something to him. it, freaked him out, and that's when he went under the table, and he said he was trying to yell at us to look out, but he couldn't, and nothing would come out because he was like having that seizure look, And he said once he fell under the table and stuff, that's when it came in closer, and then we ended up turning, and that's when I saw it, is when it came in a little closer to the window to look down at him, and that's how that portion of why he went under the table is it just freaked him out. He said, the teeth were big and blocky, and like our eye teeth, he said they weren't fangs, but they were a little more defined than ours. But he said the teeth were massive, big, like horse teeth kind of thing.
Mm.
But, and then, got him calm or whatever, and we start making a game plan because normally we don't travel on the river at dark. It's dangerous. There's deadfall trees. There's a multitude of things. You don't want to be running a skiff. We figure, we'll drift. We'll just let the current take us, but let's get the hell out of here. Anywhere safer than here. Well, when we parked that skiff, there's about 50, 70 foot of line on it, like line to the anchor, and then there's about 10, 12 feet of chain attached to the bow. Because it was used commercially at one point for the set net, right?
Mm.
And so it had a ocean waters and tides and stuff, it had extra long anchor line. And it was pulled on like 50, 70 feet back towards that same tree line that we saw these things originally, right? And so, like, man, I ain't going to get it, So I was like, we'll use the pocket knife, we'll cut that rope through the anchor, we can give crap, and, we'll get the chain in the boat, we'll drift out of here. That was our initial game plan, is we're going to get to the boat and drift away, And my cousin was like, we need to check the surroundings to make sure we can get to the boat. We don't even know where they are, we don't know, obviously there's more than one. And so, great idea. We had to kill the lamp because we were getting a mirrored effect, trying to use the spotlight out the windows, which, it helped, but, it wasn't perfect by any means. But we killed the lantern, the little Coleman lantern. We turned on that spotlight, and we look out the riverbank side first, nothing. And trust me, we were looking hard. And we go to the tree line side, as I call it, the side we saw the 3 sets of eye shine, and the side of the window where that one looked in at me. Us, I should say. We're looking there, and we immediately beam in that area. We saw the eye shine and stuff. We're looking around, and we're panning back to the left. And off the back corner of this place, about 40-ish feet, 45-degree angle off the corner, was an old outhouse. And it was built with minimal cuts, just like this little shack we were in, right?
Mm.
Just minimal cuts, real basic. And it was about 8.5 feet tall. And as we pan back, we see that just outhouse. But behind that, in the darkness, was this thing. It was blacker than black, pitch black. Humongous, 13, 14 foot tall, 5.5 foot wide at least. But it was hulking. It was absorbing the light.
Mm-hmm.
I had never seen anything like that. Even a black bear at night, you get the sheen of the hair. You get a little bit of that shine from the hair. But this absorbed the light. Like, no eye shine back, no nothing. It gave us nothing. It was like a big black nothing, and it was there for us. That's the feeling I got, So obviously we killed that light, and we're back in that little cubby area, and we got barrels crossed where everyone's saying, mumbling, yelling stuff on their own accord. None of us were talking to each other. We were just yelling a bunch of stuff, like freaking out. And it's dead quiet. And so we calm down, get quiet, and it's quiet for about, I guesstimate about 45 minutes. Well, as it's quiet, we calm down, and we start re-engaging this game plan. We're gonna get the hell out of here because there's far more going on here than we were even ready for or capable of dealing with, So the game plan again was to get that line cut. I gave my cousin my pocket knife. We got extra ammo, we got important stuff, and that was it. We weren't taking nothing, except firearms, right? And we're going over our game plan, and you got to understand, a whole bunch of hours have passed since this all started, a half hour after dark, right? And as we're going through all these game plans and stuff, and we're talking, it sounds like rotor wash from a helicopter, that thump, thump, thump sound. Well, we're starting to feel it in the ground, and it's getting louder. Well, what it was, and again, at this point, we're just sitting in the dark, right? In that little cubby area. And it sounds like a helicopter sound, but then we start feeling it in the ground. And what it was one of these things running by on that same riverbank side, like not where the water is, but towards the tree line side. There's a trail there. But, that led from the front to the riverbank and then down to that little outhouse, right? So this thing came running by, and you could feel the impact of its weight on the ground as it ran by. And that freaked us out. And then all of a sudden, it was like there was more than one standing around the place, because then they all started running in different directions around the place. And at that point, man, it was hard not to lose it. It was panic, white knuckle terror, and there was sounds they were making. I couldn't tell you at this point what they were. I have no idea. But there's noises going on along with this running around. They're all running in different directions, and you could tell they were of different sizes by the impact of their feet. You could tell some weighed more than others. But they would run around, and then they would back off, it seemed like, and it was quiet, and then they would do it again. And after the second time of them doing it, on the outside of that little camper shell that was attached to the back end of this little place, you could hear one sniffing. It was sniffing that camper trying to smell us, man. Oh, to this day, I still can't have my dog sniff by my ear. It's one of the creepiest sounds, man. I tell you what. And so that went on for, I couldn't tell you exactly how long that, I can clearly remember at least 3-4 times maybe that they did that run around and back off and do it again. And it went quiet for a good while. And there was a change outside. The light changed. So that told us, oh man, morning's coming soon, right? That gave us confidence, like, okay, it's going to be daylight, shit, we can get the hell out of here. So we start re-engaging our game plan. He has my pocket knife now. I'm going to hold the 30-06. My uncle had one of those old Wingmaster shotguns. It's a big old monster, freaking long-ass shotgun for geese. Well, I took all his birdshot out and put in my slugs because, again, I had that custom-made shotgun, and it was a slug gun. So, I had a 12-gauge ammo, and I made sure it was loaded up with Foster slugs, and those are 1-ounce slugs. If anyone's curious what a Foster slug is, it's those 1-ounce slugs you can get, right? And there were nitro magnum slugs, let me be clear. But that swapped out, and plan was my cousin was going to go first because he could run the skiff. It was his, he was used to running it, right? And he's going to have my shotgun, and I'm going to be behind him with the 30-06 and that 12 gauge over my shoulder, because my uncle wasn't he was in his mid-late 60s. He wasn't feeble, but he wasn't spry, and so plan was he was going to be behind me. I'd cover everybody while he jumps down real quick, cuts that rope, and fires up the kicker so we can get the hell out of there, right? Because it's daylight's coming. We're getting, confidence built up. And as we line up at that door, we're just about to make a break for it, right? Because it's not light out yet, but light changed on the horizon. We could see the tops of the trees with the light change, right? Mm. And that was good enough for us. We're going to get the hell out of there. Just as we're about to go out that door, it sounded like someone was shooting at the front of that, like right next to the door where there's no window, with a pellet gun. It sounded like a pellet gun shooting plywood, that sound, right? And then the cadence was like thap, 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 and then it was just like a hailstorm. Bam, immediately we're like right back into that cubby. Barrels crossed, all that. Yeah, it was all bad, It was just like every time we were building up the confidence to leave, we would get messed with again, and get sent back into terror. And, it was during them running around and that portion of what was going on that night that made me feel like they were toying with us and like feeding off negative energy, right? Mm-hmm. Anyway, so we're back tucked away again. Again, with the terror, the white knuckle terror aspect, I'm guessing 45 minutes, hour. Maybe it could, been a little longer. I don't know. It was just chaos in my minds, and but reinvigorated us is it was light enough at that point that we could see clearly to the tree line. We couldn't see in the trees because it was still like real dark in the trees, but we could easily see any open area. We could easily see, okay, that's a little bush, that's a tree, whatever, that's the outhouse. There was nothing around. We looked and looked and looked. And so we're like, okay. And we get stacked up again. My cousin's in front, I'm behind him, my uncle's behind me, and our game plan was go straight out this door, and it's 20 feet to the riverbank, which seemed like 10 miles, right? And it's 6-7 foot drop down at a little angle, and that's where the little landing was, where the skiff was. And so I, after we all thoroughly looked and were confident nothing was around, we made to go. We go out, and you had thought we'd done this, practice it for 30 years. It's just boom. We moved like a well-oiled machine. We're at the riverbank. My cousin jumps down, and I set down the 30-06, and I still had that Wingmaster shotgun, a big-ass shotgun over my shoulder, but I had to help my uncle around so he can get his footing because there was dew, and the way the grass was hanging on the riverbank edge, it was dewy grass and then kind of a muddy decline down. It wasn't super steep, but it was steep enough for him to need to get his footing first before he could do it on his own. And I had knelt down on one knee and I was helping him. And once he got his footing, that shotgun was kind of pushing me forward a little bit. So I scooted back about like 4 to 6 inches, grabbed 30-06, and I stood up. And when I got the full height, that's when this rock, a little bigger than a basketball, whizzed by my nose, and everything went slow motion, tunnel vision hard. And I watched this rock go, followed it all the way. It impacted part of the river that was about 3 foot deep, fast moving river, okay? This rock hit so hard, it hit bottom. It made this sound of like a gun going off before the water could close over it, like loud. And that moment, those earmuffs feeling that had been constant the whole night went away. But I was in shock, man. I was getting tunnel vision. Everything was like closing out, but I swing to my left and I got that 30-06 up on my shoulder. And just in that tree line coming out of it was that big black one, the big dark one that was giving nothing. And it was like it was floating. It was real weird. It was like it was moving. And I figured that swept through the rock. Okay. And I put 3 shots on it real fast, center mass with that 30-06. I never worked bolt action rifles so fast in my life. It must have sounded like a semi-automatic, but I shot it 3 times and it just stopped moving forward. Now, this rifle, the same rifle we've killed walrus with, bear with, moose with, this thing is tried and true. It's accurate. Open sights, it was accurate. Like, it was a go rifle. You know what I mean? 30-06, 180 grain soft tip Corlocks. Dude, like, it wasn't just some e-shooter. It's freaking 30-06, man.
Yeah.
But it just stopped moving forward. It didn't flinch. It didn't buckle. Same rifle, shoot a walrus, 2,000 plus pound walrus. Trust me, they flop around. They make noise. They feel it. This thing just stopped moving forward. So after those 3 shots, and nothing happened. Like, my tunnel vision was real bad, but like there was movement on left and right of it inside that tree line. Okay, from the other ones that happened to be there. I jumped down. I noticed my shotgun on the ground, and I figured I'd grab that. Well, my cousin had just gotten the motor started. My uncle's sitting on the edge of the skiff, with his legs, out on the beach side, still not fully in it, right? Because all this is happening real fast. So I'm yelling at my cousin, throw me my knife, throw me my knife. He throws the knife because he didn't cut that line. And so I set the 30-06 in the bow, I cut the line, and putting the chain in, right? And of course I'm shaking like hell, and so I'm kind of dropping the chain and trying to get it in as fast as I can, but I'm telling him idle down because he's trying to shift, but it's cold, so it's idling high. I'm trying to tell him idle down because he's kind of got the throttle open quite a bit, and I'm yelling him idle down, throttle down, because it's not shifting, because it's chaos, right? I quickly I dropped the chain from him, moved over, and I shoved my uncle in because he still hadn't gotten in the skiff. I'm about to push up here like in a millisecond, right? As soon as he could, shift the boat or whatever, get it into reverse, I shoved him in, right? And he ended up spraining his ankle pretty bad, or his wrist from that pretty bad. But I get back to the bow because it was a 22-foot long flat bottom skiff. When I shove him in, I come back around, I'm getting the rest of the chain in. Because you don't want that dragging underneath you when you're going downriver. It catches something and flip the whole boat and kill you, that kind of thing. But I'm getting the chain in, and all of a sudden he shifts it into reverse. It was a real hard shift because it was cold. And all of a sudden I'm looking back at them. I'm about to start pushing, and this is all happening way faster than it's taking me to tell you. When I look at them, my uncle had turned his body. He's sitting on his ass on the bottom of the skiff, looking back behind me on the riverbank. Same with my cousin, and their eyes are big. And so I look over my right shoulder, and at the top of the riverbank there, I just noticed from up to its about top of its shin where its knee would be, it was a very dark-haired one. But the tips of the hairs, it's amazing what sticks out in your mind. But the tips of the hairs were like a orangutan orangish red,
Wow.
but the rest was black. You've seen a rose-haired tarantula, huh?
Yeah.
Or something similar where there's all black hair, but then the tips have that lighter color. It was that.
Wow.
And it wasn't a big black one, but when I saw that, I pushed and I jump in and I'm grabbing the 30-06, and he's backing up, and I'm so tunnel vision from shock. I got the bolt open of that 30-06, and I'm barely seeing the open bolt, and I'm trying to get more 30-06 rounds in it, right? And as I'm loading it up, I'm feeling my pockets trying to find the 220 grain rounds, but it's all chaos in my mind, you know? And I'm trying to get this gun loaded, and I notice we're swaying back and forth in the skiff. And I figured he was trying to break friction to get up on step. I found out 15 years later that what he was doing was swerving because he was chucking rocks at the outboard.
Whoa.
One hit the transom really hard and dented it, and another one hit the cowling of the outboard and cracked it. But they were trying to disable the boat. But why they didn't overnight, I have no clue. But, you know, it's just how it played out. But we were swaying back and forth, and I get the thing loaded, and I look over to my left, and I could see movement on the riverbank begin with that tunnel vision and the shock and everything kicking in, man. It was hectic. And my concern was they're going to get ahead of us and push trees down in front of us in the water. But after a half mile, then a mile, and, you know, we're fully on step. The engine's warm. I mean, we're cruising, right? You know, and I calmed down, and I was able to just, like, set the gun down, and like, man, it was horrible because I had been up all night, so tense and everything. And when we got to where the mouth of the Nuyaktuk is the confluence to the Nushagak, because the Nuyaktuk River is just a tributary, smaller river to the Nushagak River. When we got to that point, I knew I was able to relax because we weren't too far from the village of Kaliganik, and I knew there's more people there in relative safety, you know. But once we got to that point, I felt like I weighed 1,000 pounds, man. Like, just all the tension and stress, I was finally able to let some of it go, and I was dead weight, barely moved, just wiped out. But that's, in essence, that 2006 encounter.
Oh wow, that's
Wow.
pretty. That's torture. That's torture. That's a long. Sounds like they were messing with you guys, and you know they just wanted the adrenaline pumping in your veins. You know, I don't know if that makes it taste good, but that is very. You know, I'm sorry you went through that, and I'm glad that you're here with us to share that story and to put the awareness out there for everybody listening and watching. We're running low on time, and I'd like to book you on the second Sunday of August for your part 2, if you don't mind.
Okay, say that again, please.
I was just saying that I would like to see if I can get you back in for part 2 in August to hear some more.
Oh, geez, man, you plan out, don't you?
Yeah.
To this one. But, I mean, I'm definitely open to coming on again. That's for sure.
Oh, heck yeah. I mean, this is, you know, we love hearing these stories like this and to relay it for everybody. And this is very important information. You know, this is life and death, whether you're going to be missing or not. This is very important. And I'd like to say thank you again, Mr. Fred, from Darren and I and everyone out here listening and watching the show tonight. Thank you.
Oh yeah, no, you're more than welcome, man. Sorry again, the StreamYard wasn't working, man. That's all that money from Starlink, and anyway, they'll hear about it.
Oh, it's all good. It's all good. Fred, is there any last things you would like to say for our listeners out there?
Well, if who's winning an encounter of their own, you got to be careful what you wish for because you just might get it.
Huh. Oh yeah, well said.
Yep.
Well said right there. Yes, sir. Alrighty, Fred. Thank you again. We're gonna wrap up the show right now. Appreciate your time and all your information and your knowledge. Thank you again.
No worries,
Yeah,
man.
thank you.
Anytime I can
Thank
do.
you.
But you guys have a great night. Thanks again for having me on, and have a good night, everyone out there listening.
Oh, you as well. Thank you, Fred. But
Wow.
all right, that was Fred in Alaska, man. Woo, man.
Chilly, huh? Chilly.
Yeah. Oh,
You remember first time we started talking, we started doing this podcast. I always talked about this otter person, this otter man.
oh
And I
yeah.
was like, oh well, oh shoot, there's our first otter man sighting right there. The what do you call that? Oh man, it just slipped my tongue. But wow,
Yeah.
really
Maybe
chilly
next time.
stuff.
Oh yeah. But we gotta go to sleep. We're closing the show right now. All right, man. All right.
All right.
Good job, Darren. All right,
Yep.
man.
Good job.
We'll see.
Yep.
Oh, Darren, you want to say later to everyone before I close up?
Later, peace. See you next Sunday or Monday, Tuesday, whenever. So.
Yeah. All right, man. Hey, everyone joining beginning of the show and late of the show. As soon as this is over, you guys please go back and rewatch all these because there's a lot of good information that was said here. And for me, your co-host and Darren, this is another great evening. We like hanging out with you guys every Sunday. Our 1 year is coming up and you're watching us grow old together. But other than that, that's all I gotta say. And thank you for tuning into Don't Whistle at Night. We have been broadcasting live here on the United Public Radio Network, 107.7 FM in New Orleans. You guys have a great night. And remember, you guys don't whistle at night. Peace. See ya.
Welcome to Don't Whistle at Night podcast, where Navajo legends echo in the shadows. Darren and Dawn will guide you through the sacred fire of native storytelling, where the old stories breathe, the unknown walks among us, and voices, long hidden, rise to be heard. And remember, don't whistle at night.